So here we go. He's here. How's it going?
Good morning or good afternoon. How you doing, Dr. Joe?
Good afternoon. I'm doing very well. Can't complain. I'm excited to finally do this again after we had so much good stuff to talk about last time.
Oh yeah, we picking up where we left off, and now eyeballs and neck and brain speaking the same language. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, we got to get it. We got to get it all connected. And I think when a lot of people have symptoms, they're confused. It's just such a confusing area of the body. Where do you go? How much time people spend on the wrong treatments, wasting money, and so like being able to determine that first and foremost.
Yeah,
I mean, it's critical, and like I think that's why I do so much education. I know you as well do a ton of education.
yeah. And for the person who's struggling unnecessarily because they haven't gotten the access to the right care yet, I think a lot of people listening are probably thinking like, "What's the right order of operations? How do I unlock potential with so much of this?" And I think just taking action, that's the first step, and taking the right action and the right intentional action. But so much of both of our work individually, I think, has overlap. But then, with what we're
Yeah,
talking about together, it's just going to be better results faster for so many people.
yeah, yeah. It's just putting the pieces together. So I know we have so many different angles and directions we could take this talk, and we had some questions front loaded from people also. But let's just I think we should revisit the fundamentals again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's start with what you had to correct me on a few times the first time. The difference between vision and eyesight
Yeah.
and how it all works at a
All
high
right.
level.
Biggest take home, at least from the eye brain connection piece for everybody today, eyesight and vision, they're different things. Eyesight's our ability to see. That's how we can focus light clearly. That's a symptom.
Right.
Vision is so much more complex, and there's so much more to vision than just 20/20 eyesight. So vision is how our brain filters, organizes, processes, stores all the input coming in through the eyes, so we know
Mm-hmm.
how to make sense of it, organize it, derive meaning, and then direct the appropriate action. So think of eyesight as glasses, vision is brain. Vision problems are brain problems, and most of them are functional problems that, with the right work, we can significantly improve function. And so, kind of like PT for the eyes in our perspective, but for you, I mean, PT for the body, it's everything is intertwined, and really how well the eyes work together as a team and how well it sends the right signals to the brain to direct the postural mechanisms. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of so when if we just looked at the neck as the movements that it produces, that's kind of like eyesight, right? It's what the eyes can actually see. If we just looked at the jaw, the way that the jaw moves, if we just looked at the way the shoulders interact, that. But when you talk about combining it all, putting it together so that it's movement that flows together, that there's not misinformation coming from from area to the other, and then that produces symptoms such as dizziness, pain, brain fog, headaches, etc. That connection, the nervous system, the intercommunication, that's essentially vision.
Yeah,
Your version or my version
totally,
of vision.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. And that vision gets thrown off from stress from the environment. And so, like what we're doing right now, staring at screens, that's
Yeah.
causing this adaptation. That's causing the visual system to be locked up. That's causing our brain to function differently than it's wired, just to resolve the confusion. And
Hmm.
that's when so much of our bodies try and compensate for what vision's not providing for them. The desire to lean in, or, those of us who have kids, you'll see your kids, like, the longer they're on a tablet, the closer the tablet is to them. That's the focusing system, the inside muscles of the eyes
Mm.
not working like it's supposed to. So we're having our body try and take over what our visual system's not doing.
So when there's, I guess let's get to the symptoms of dysfunction for you, and then we can talk
Yeah.
about it for me too. So, what visual dysfunction then, if that's a term that you use,
Yeah. Yeah.
what are the I'm getting fancy. What are the symptoms of it? How do you know that there's something going on there?
So as to give it even a more formal name, binocular vision dysfunction, BVD.
Okay,
That's the eyes not working well together as a team.
got it.
And that can show up a lot of different ways, but the most common ways would be eye strain, fatigue, headaches, decreased productivity throughout the school or workday. Like you mentioned, brain fog, but take tasks that require really careful binocular vision or eye teaming. That would be reading and engaging
Mm-hmm.
with screens where our eyes have to converge, they have to focus, they have to point, they have to track. So that's if your brain's on overdrive trying to use your eyes appropriately, that means you're going to lose your place with reading and you're going to skip words or lines, or you're going to have
Mm-hmm.
difficulty remembering what you're reading, or you're going to have to reread a ton, or you're going to avoid reading and will not want to rely on your ears and audiobooks or somebody reading to you rather than reading with your eyes. Those
Mm-hmm.
are all really common. And avoidance of tasks that are hard. So somebody who prefers to be read to, or is at the end of the day pulling out a book to help them fall asleep faster at night because it's so fatiguing and taxing to the system. I mean, that's warning bells all around that the eyes are not working well together.
Really?
And that also can be when we extend to farther areas in space, like driving. People who fear driving at night when there's less visual input, or if you have trouble catching a ball, if you're hesitant around stairs or escalators, if you're not having a confident sense of self in space, it's because your eyes are sending the wrong signals to your brain on where things are and where you're located in space. What about you? What are the biggest signs for you of what would you say is the most common dysfunction that you're seeing?
Well, I see a combination. So there's isolated problems. So someone has specific neck pain. Maybe it goes to the shoulder, maybe it goes to the hands or shoulder blades, but it's just in this area. It's you can pinpoint it. Someone has jaw pain. My jaw just hurts here, or maybe it just hurts on both sides. Then you have people who I have headaches, and then you have people where it's headaches or migraines, and then I have dizziness, and there's the vestibular dysfunction in terms of vertigo, which is
Yeah.
intense room spinning. It's debilitating. It can last a couple hours, but more common than that, I see this. No, like I could still function. I could do what I have to do, but it's just not enjoyable. It's not fun.
Yeah.
I'm just
It's
disoriented.
hard.
And I'm like, like I can get through the day, but I'm just kind of feel like a shell of myself. And that's the kind of dizziness that I deal with a lot. And to kind of wrap it all together, there's the specific dysfunctions, but what I see much more of is a combination. I have
Yeah.
neck pain and jaw pain. I have jaw pain and headaches. I have neck jaw to the headaches. My dizziness happens when my eyes burn. It's brain fog and my jaw hurts. So when we start getting, so usually when it's a very isolated problem, it would be more mechanical in nature. So maybe there is a specific joint problem, a specific muscle that's being overused, etc. When we start jumping and we're experiencing multiple symptoms at a time, that's when I know it's more systemically involved. So the nervous system gets involved, it starts hypersensitizing things. Your movement patterns are making multiple areas get pulled and activated that shouldn't be. And usually the neck and jaw have this intimate connection through a nucleus in the brain you can have jaw dysfunction that can go through the neck, producing the dizziness and headaches and eye symptoms. Or the neck alone can do that. And so for me, it's always determining, is this more of an isolated problem or does this seem like a integrated problem? And then from there, start breaking down. Like there's not always one root cause, but usually we can identify the number one thing, the main driver, and we can start there. And then there's like a trickle down effect. So let's say I didn't know that it was 80% neck, 50% neck, 20% jaw, and 30% nervous system. But I started with the neck. That may dissipate the nervous system piece, and just remain with the jaw piece. So instead of me trying to solve every problem at once, I usually just pick the biggest driver and let's see what gets eliminated just from that, and then we can move on.
You can't solve everything at once. What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You hit on 5 things that I think would be so cool to just go back and forth on our thoughts
Yeah.
on. Headaches, vertigo, dizziness, brain fog, and nervous system.
Yeah.
So let's like, not for hours, but like a minute or so with each. Like I think when I hear headaches, like headaches that are around the eyes and the forehead up here, or worse on screens or with reading, like to me that screams something with the visual system.
Gotcha.
Are most of the headaches you're seeing and helping in this area, or they're kind of the ones that wrap around and all throughout the
Yeah.
head?
So I see a lot of side of head because the TMJ refers up there, the muscles that clench, like the
Yeah.
temporalis is up there, the suboccipitals and some other muscles along the neck refer there, the nerves in the upper neck refer there. So I see a lot of side of head, and they usually have something in the back of the head as well. Um, I do get the burning eye symptoms, more than the fatigue, but the burning eyes more so than the fatigue. Burning
Yeah.
eyes, kind of almost double vision sometimes, which can be produced right through the neck. But the eyes are usually just a secondary symptom for me. But one of the classic ones is right through the side of the head.
I mean, how cool is this that like we have such intimate knowledge of our areas of expertise, but there's so much overlap. So I think for
Yeah,
anyone who's
yeah,
listening who's got a strong file on vision, if your headaches are on one side or in the back or wrapping around, I mean, I think that's you become obsessed with Dr. Joe's work because that's going to move the needle the fastest right away.
yeah.
And then if they're around more up front here, like there's probably a visual component.
Right.
I would say post COVID now, the focusing system, the accommodative system, the inside muscles of the eyes absolutely play a role in pretty much all headaches and eye strain that is worse with screens or reading because it's, again, this system that's under tension over time. And unless we're trying to get buff and lift weights with our visual system, tension over time is not a good thing. So that, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right. What about next? Dizziness. Like, how do
Yeah,
you describe
yeah.
dizziness and what do you see with dizziness?
So again, there's the vertigo piece of it, which I don't usually get too involved in.
Okay.
But what I classify as dizziness is it's almost like a tie-in with a headache and brain fog, but you don't really want to move. You want to close your eyes. It's this. They make this face a lot, looking around. It's this aching, and usually with me, I find something. There's also a symptom in the neck, and it changes with positioning. So if I stay in this position for too long, it will stimulate. If I'm sitting for too long, it will stimulate. If I have to be turned like at a dinner, I'll start getting those symptoms. So usually I can tie it back to the neck or the jaw. So usually there's an upper neck component, a jaw component, and what I'll do is I'll assess movement in those areas, or I'll have them stay in certain positions and provoke it and go change positions. And does that alone start reproducing your dizziness? Well, if movement can reproduce it, then we know there's some type of mechanical dysfunction there. But to describe it, it's just this more of a disorientation. That's the most common word that I get.
Yeah. And I think that's fascinating. So for me with dizziness, it's really the visual system and then the vestibular system sending conflicting signals that the brain can't interpret or make sense of. And so vestibular system, for those listening who are like, what's that V word? It's the internal GPS and the roadmap of life that lets you know which way is up and down and left and right. And in our brain, these pathways are interwoven, intimately linked, where when there's movement around us, our visual system, our neck, and our vestibular system have this triad that really need to be processing and coordinating the same input in terms of how to respond.
Yeah.
And a lot of times somebody who's like motion sick or dizzy in a car, what's in front of them is not moving, but they're getting all of this optic flow and sensation of movement around them. And it throws them into this disequilibrium, which is why somebody who is less dizzy or motion sick when they're driving up front and can open up their peripheral vision and see out the window, that's a way better scenario than if you're in the back seat or reading on a phone when you're driving that central focal processing. And it's kind of like, I'm not moving, but I am moving. What does this mean? This isn't safe. Get me out of here. And that's really what causes a lot of this. So the recalibration that's needed is getting the right feedback from the eyes, from these other systems to reprogram the brain, to rewire the software so that you can get really accurate in terms of sense of self and space and how your brain is processing that input.
So you're saying that if someone's in the car and the car is moving, but they're not, and they're a passenger in the car, and that worsens their symptoms, right? What is the meaning of that?
So that's typically a vision problem and one that's treatable. especially if when they're driving, it's better. So when you're driving, you're
'Cause
actually
you're focused on something, right?
you're focused, but you're able to access your periphery, your side vision,
Okay.
and that really stabilizes your
Oh,
central
very
vision.
good.
And
Yeah.
then also you can make the body movements that are really small that allow the fluid in your inner ears to be balanced more.
Yeah, you can make
Rather,
corrections.
totally.
Yeah.
And especially somebody like we have a lot of patients who are like, I want to be able to read the newspaper going sideways on the train on the way to work. Like we can get almost anybody to that place. I would say in general, that's probably not ideal for the
It's the
brain, but
most challenging. Yeah.
like we can get there. And so, um, the central and peripheral visual processing pathways, when those are working fluidly in a happy marriage, dizziness, motion sickness, nausea, vertigo, those aren't options. But when they're not, when there's this disconnect, that's when the simplest of tasks can elicit these symptoms. And the
Mm.
normal stress response, where our autonomic nervous system goes into a fight or flight response, from a vision perspective, that means we get this tunnel vision. And then it almost
Hmm.
makes it even worse because we're blocking off everything else and we're
Hmm.
becoming less stable in space.
So the benefit from what I'm understanding is that, again, to go to the driver scenario, you're able to make sense and connect the whole picture together. Whereas, like when you're down, you have two different pictures that are not connected to each other. You have a phone in your face, you have a book, but then you have the peripheral stuff that I
Right.
guess you're not, and then it creates, yeah, you know, process. It's just amazing how, like, when it comes to so what you're talking about with the brain and vision and all of the complexities of it, it ties back to what I do as well, because usually when people are in persistent pain, not acute injury, it's it turns into a confusion. Like that's kind of what
Yeah.
you're saying. Like the brain's confused, and with the people that I'm talking about, it's confusion as well because the pain started in one place, it migrated to another place. The brain doesn't even remember the original point because as the system gets sensitized, what started here, the brain has a map, the homunculus in the brain that knows like this part of your face is represented here inside the brain, and this part of your shoulder is represented here. And it's really good at when I poke here, it knows. Now, over time, when you've been in pain and signals have been sending, and what happens is, for different reasons, it's called central and peripheral sensitization, everything starts getting sensitized, and that map starts getting essentially blurry. So it knows something's wrong, so it wants to send pain signals. And instead of sending them right back to where the problem originally was, it starts sending them here and here and here. And then what happens is pain makes you want to stop moving because you're scared you're damaging something. And so then you don't, like, you stop moving. So then you have physical restrictions that start becoming activated. And then you go into the state of worry and hyper focus on it and what's
That's a
going
health
on.
piece.
And
Oh,
it
totally.
just, and then it creates a
Spiral.
whole confusion and a spiral. So a lot of it ultimately leads to confusion. Like I've had people who have messaged me about like just watching a quick video when I would talk about the nervous system and been like, I watched that video and like 70% of my symptoms went away. And it's not a testament to me. It's just a testament to education, understanding. Like if someone
Understand.
makes you understand it and that fear goes away, all of a sudden, whoa, where did that cloud go that was just around me?
And then you throw on top of that, like everyone who's been on this wild goose chase of figuring out root cause of what's going on, seeing all these doctors, no one having any answers. And then it's kind of like, well, is this in, they're being told it's in their head, or they're
Right.
thinking if somebody can't figure out what this is, it must be. But ultimately, that's showing you haven't given up on yourself. And also, no one's asking the right questions to figure out what it is that's actually causing this.
Yes.
By the way, I love that you just dropped homunculus. I love that word.
I saw you smirking over there.
I love
know.
that. All right,
It's the weirdest thing you'll learn in school.
Let's go to brain fog. Tell me,
Yeah.
when you hear brain fog, what is your first response and reaction to it?
When I think of brain fog, I think more so than jaw, I think more neck and shoulders. And so what I think about brain fog as someone's system gets to a point that there is so much processing going on outside of being in the moment. There's this pain and this radiating and this changing and this little bit of a headache, and it just takes up more circuitry. It's pulling power from you. And so usually the more involved people's symptoms are, they start experiencing this brain fog. That's one piece of it, just a pure volume of what's going on. And then the other piece is typically the upper neck. Once you start getting into the blood vessels and the nerves and the muscles in there that tighten up, you have to remember your dura mater, which is the casing of the brain, it actually connects into the upper cervical region. And so when there's compression in there, it's actually compressing the structure that encapsulates the brain, and it can lead to these headaches and brain fog as well. So it can be specific with the neck, but also I just find if people have enough different pains going on, it just pulls from them.
Fascinating. I mean, so for me, when I hear brain fog, like if you cannot control your eyes and their ability to focus, you can't control your mind and its ability to focus. And so often brain fog is a clear message of the brain on overdrive, just trying to get the eyes to work together as a team. And whether that's, tracking, whether that's eye coordination, whether that's focusing, whether that's depth perception. And it's almost this kind of unconscious sign of like disengage from the task or rest and recover because there's too much stress that you don't have the foundation to support. And of course, when there's inflammation within the body and specifically neuroinflammation, the brain fog gets worse. And then the simplest of things can trigger what was already there from another reason and make it worse. And I know we see all the time with especially our head injury population, which is like more than half our practice, that certain like gluten, dairy, sugar, processed food, alcohol can trigger those symptoms.
Yeah.
But then also like junk lighting and fluorescent lights and this sensory overload that's like, oh my God, get me out of this environment, like from a mall, grocery store, Costco.
Yeah.
And that's really common after a head injury is that you get this fight or flight response and you just want to kind of pull back because you can't take in and process this busy environment.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, especially on the brain injury piece. And even, brain injury is a spectrum. But once you start involving headaches and migraines and dizziness more, it's so much more of an internalized feeling than when you get into the neck, shoulder, and jaw. And so it's almost exclusively tied with that feeling of brain fog. And a lot of people will tell me that they're like, I feel strong. Like my body's strong. Like it's just like, I feel weak here. Like it's this, my body's not tired. My head is tired.
Yeah. I I haven't brought this up to you in the past, but when I was in med school, I know there was a lot of stress. There was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of pressure. And I remember I developed basically this grinding in my teeth, this TMJ, and it impacted everything.
Yeah.
How we internalize stress and how we respond to stress, it's so unique to the person.
Yeah.
And obviously you eliminate the cause of the stress. That's going to make things way better, faster. But what would you say to somebody who, is noticing that they're developing something new based off of the circumstances of life that's specific in the jaw? I mean, awareness is huge.
Yeah.
But then do you prescribe exercises and like stretching and flexibility stuff?
Yeah. So if stress is producing actual clenching, so the muscles of the jaw can become painful and dysfunctional if you're clenching or grinding, actually pushing the teeth together and moving them. Or just there's studies that show you don't even have to be touching your teeth together. If you just hold tension there, it can produce similar symptoms. So just the act of holding tension there. And yes, stress and lifestyle can contribute. By the way, that's only one of the buckets of jaw pain. The other ones are actually the TMJ joint itself as the origin, and then the neck, which I talk about that a lot. But so if you're in what you just described as like the stress tension bucket that I would call it.
Got it.
Right off the bat, we know that you're holding tension there and you're probably compressing the joint in there. And that can lead to synovitis, which is an inflammation. And that could actually lead to a joint issue, like degrading the joint. So the first thing we want to do is protect that joint. Using a night appliance, a night guard, an oral appliance, just a simple hard acrylic spaced between your teeth. What that does is it's not going to stop the clenching, first of all. You may put that in there and clench exactly the same. Some people may clench even worse on it. And that's an unfortunate case because then you may actually have to take it out. But you're probably not going to stop clenching because of it. But what it's going to do is, number one, protect your teeth, which is, trust me, everyone wants to protect their teeth.
Yep.
But also the TMJ, before you had the device, every time you clenched, it would compress. But now, because your teeth are separated, the joint can't get that full compression. So you're actually protecting the joint, and you're allowing normal healing process to take place. So if you can just put a simple hard acrylic appliance in, nothing fancy, and as long as it doesn't make you worse, if it keeps you the same or improves you, that's fine. But you're protecting everything. That's number one. And if you are really inflamed, you can use ice, of course, just to calm it down. But one thing is, we just want to protect the joint. And then once you've protected the joint, you feel like, okay, now I bought myself some time. Like, my joint's protected. Now I can start working on strategies to actually stop this. Yes. Going back to that sensitization of the nervous system, just massaging and releasing the muscle, no, that's not going to fix the root cause. But because so much tension's there and it's being so sensitized because of the pain, just by going in and releasing, it can send a signal back to the brain to tell it, like, hey, we're safe. Let's calm things down. And now you've further got yourself in a state of healing. So you've protected the joint, you got everything to calm down. And then we start looking at different things. Yes, lifestyle strategies, things that we know produce clenching, better sleep strategies, ways to mitigate stress, education. And then there's exercises, because there's different, for example, one thing is, if you, and anyone watching can actually try this, if you shift your head, if you just chatter your teeth like this, right? And then you do it while shifting your head forward like this. What you'll notice as you do that is your teeth, your bottom teeth, start contacting further back, because as you shift forward, all the muscles of the neck that connect to the jaw start pushing it back. And so people who have a tendency to be down and forward, or maybe they're just locked up so they just can't get upright, when your teeth get shifted back like that, they get closer. And so you close down the space between the teeth. And then when your teeth hit, there's a higher likelihood that you're going to start clenching and holding tension. So there's mechanical components to this also. And so we just kind of go into a little bit of everything.
And I'm sure that can, like, that long enough can shift your bite, can shift your breathing, can shift everything, right?
It shifts your breathing. And then all of a sudden, then again, you start saying, man, my shoulder blade's killing me. Because then now it's all connected. So that's why when I first started treating this, I was like, I'm treating your jaw, I'm treating your neck, I'm treating your shoulder. And now I'm just like, it's head, neck, and jaw. Like anytime it's whole body, but we start with, it's just head, neck, and jaw. I'm not treating just that area. I need to look at how everything's working together. And the way I usually do is I start in like chunks. So there's if you think about, and maybe you can talk to this also after, when you think about the whole body, right? You see things online like fix your foot, it'll fix your jaw, fix your hip, it'll fix your jaw, like different. I find that if you go to the source first, you can start unwinding that pain and the dysfunction in the immediate area. So I like to treat head, neck, and jaw first. Let's get this functioning. Yeah, your hip or your core, your pelvic floor, something maybe, if you don't fix that, it's going to bring you back into that loop. But if we can at least start getting success here, then we work down and we work those other parts. I'm not a fan of starting at some random part of the body to address up here because it just doesn't work as well. But yeah. So
we'll see.
It's the same with vision at all.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see so many people who are toe walkers, or the opposite, who are like more pigeon-toed. And very often, like if our perception of space is off, or if we're aligning our eyes as if we're perceiving things closer in space than we're located, we'll adjust our body to compensate. And so with specific vision exercises and specific protocols, we can literally open up the world and make it so that your posture is more stable, your gait is more balanced, your visual midline is actually where your body midline is. You're not having your body compensate. We have a couple pro baseball players in treatment with us right now who notice that, like, certain speed pitches, because they have a specific vision problem influencing the perception of space, like they'll lean in more if the pitch is too slow, because it's like they're like holding themselves back, and then that throws off their entire sequence and their entire motor
pattern. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm biased, I know, but vision is our dominant sensory system. It really is what should be tying together input from all of our other senses, but it should be allowing us to confidently connect with space, but then also confidently navigate space, because somebody who struggles is hesitant with escalators, or isn't trusting what they're seeing with stairs, like that's a very simple, the brain's depth perception is off. And any brain at any age can be rewired, has neuroplasticity to be able to make it so that this is exactly where it needs to be in terms of the processing that needs to take place. We're getting a ton of questions in here.
I know.
Do you want to knock some of these out?
Yeah, let's go for some questions here. Let me see what we have here. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. All right. Let's see.
I know we got one at the beginning about whiplash. You want to talk about whiplash a little bit?
Yeah, we could talk about that. So, whiplash. What happens during whiplash is you're sitting there in your car. If it's just whiplash from the car, you get hit, and what happens is the first thing that happens is your head goes back. And so what happens is it stretches everything on the front here because it just your body goes forward and your head goes back. And that's why the headrest is so important to make sure it stops that. So your head goes back and then your body, now your stretch reflex kicks in. So it knows there's a quick stretch, so it tries to protect you and it does this. And then your head flies this way. And then these muscles, your head's still accelerating really fast this way, try to stop it and they try to pull you back. So it's like a 1-2 punch real quick. You get impacted on the front and the back. And this whiplash, I should really talk about whiplash more. It is such a hidden. People sometimes forget that they had whiplash, and they start having these problems. You dive into their history. They're like, I did have a car accident, but like I was fine after that. When you get a muscle that gets locked up or a joint gets overstretched, and it's not just about, I'll just fix my posture and get back into it. Posture works for a portion of people. But for most people, this is important. There's one segment or something that got, during that incident, shifted a position. It's overly tight now. This is overly stretched in the front. And no matter how much you fix your posture, everything responds except that one little area in there. And this, of course, also impacts the jaw whiplash. Because when your head comes back, all these muscles attach to the jaw, then you come forward. So when it comes, if you had any type of incident that might resemble whiplash, and then afterwards you start noticing different symptoms related to the neck, or maybe not, maybe it's a dizziness, maybe it's a headache, maybe it's a jaw, as I was saying, it all can be interconnected. That's something we have to explore. Like, we have to take you through different movements, and there's simple assessments that you can do to start identifying what type of restriction could be there. And usually, one last thing with that, because it's such a wham bam thing that happens, the nervous system almost inevitably gets involved because it's traumatic. And so your brain says, what the hell just happened? I need to tighten everything up to protect us. And that's one of the quicker way that loop starts there.
Yeah. And so when I hear whiplash, like, I immediately view that as a mild traumatic brain injury, just because we know, like, the changes that happen at such a microcellular level can drastically impact function. And you brought up, like, most people forgetting about whiplash. NIH, a mile down the road from my office in Bethesda, Maryland, says 28% of Americans have had at least one concussion in their lifetime. But oftentimes it's a concussion that you never even knew was a concussion, right? Because you went to the doc at the ER and they're like, oh, you may have had a concussion, but I don't know, you're fine. You sit in a dark room or get back to life, you'll be fine. Neither of those are right. But it's really then the present day symptoms or challenges that can be tied to a prior incident that at least gives you peace of mind to know, okay, I'm not crazy, something happened. But then in terms of how to climb out of that, like, specific, from my standpoint, specific vision exercises and specific protocols that you prescribe can allow it so that any concussion, any whiplash, in my opinion, can get back to previous level function. You just have to do the right work, and you got to be compliant, and you got to know what to do.
Is there a lag, a longer recovery time the longer you wait from the initial incident occurrence?
So I think the symptoms often change with time, but the problems don't go away. You just learn how to bypass them from a vision perspective. So I would say, like, what's really common is something called suppression of binocular vision, which basically means because of this competition or rivalry over the brain using both eyes, because it's too hard the brain will literally just shut off input from one of the eyes to get rid of the confusion. And that can impact so many things. With time, that becomes more embedded. So it's just different work or more work is needed to break it. But if you've had a head injury or even minor whiplash a week ago or 10 years ago, there still is, in most cases, a perfect prognosis, to the point where you can fix all of that with the right work. It just means there's a lot of unnecessary struggling, and it's maybe a bad habit that's more embedded, more stepped on the longer you've been struggling.
Yeah, it becomes more vague and harder. That's why people forget or don't know what the cause may have been. Probably too much time has went by.
But I mean, especially if we're lucky enough to see them in person in office, like you do the right test, you can absolutely identify all this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And there's been a couple comments in here on like, are there vision exercises that can help improve this? There's vision exercises that can fix this. And it's not as simple as like, oh, do eye stretches and you'll be fine. It's the right sequencing of learning. But I mean, we work with people in office, but we have an online vision training program called ScreenFit. And I know we set up a code so that anybody listening can use Dr. Joe, DRGOE, and you get a $200 discount off a ScreenFit, and that's like a 40% off discount. That goes through 30 different exercises. That can be really, really effective and really helpful. But it's really, number one, making sure we know what the problem is, but then the work that needs to be done to get to a better place. And from a vision perspective, when you start using your brain a different way than it's wired, once our brain learns the path of least resistance, once it learns how to heal and to reestablish the right firing and wiring, this then becomes yours to keep, and you're good to go, assuming you just avoid additional head injuries down the road.
Right, because then they compound over time.
Totally.
We had a question here. Nausea and vertigo, kind of what we're talking about, long after a car accident. It doesn't go away with constant headaches. Do you want to kind of, if you may have already kind of touched on this, but do you want to
totally
go to the
So, nausea and vertigo, that's this disconnect between our eyes working together and then our vestibular system, like we talked about briefly at the beginning. So often nausea and vertigo come up now with screen time and with reading and junk lighting, maybe from a head injury, maybe not, but that's really your brain in that fight or flight response and in that autonomic dysfunction. And really what's required is almost using the eyes as kind of like joysticks to tap into the brain to reestablish communication between the areas that have been damaged or bypassed. And very often the damage after head injury, it doesn't show up on imaging. It's not going to show up on a CAT scan or an MRI. It's going to show up only in like a very rare type of test, like a functional MRI or a SPECT scan that actually looks at functional changes in real time. And most people don't have access to that. But then in terms of what we do to get there, we're literally desensitizing the brain, but also establishing visual skills and abilities that close the gaps and allow the brain to operate the way in which it's functioning. So often the tracking system's impacted, which is across our body, the x-axis, but always the z-axis is impacted. And that's how the inside and outside muscles of the eyes are working together. And I think a good analogy is we want our focusing system, the inside muscles, to be like an old school camera lens that's on autofocus, where we can make things clear and single no matter what. But when there's a head injury or when there's a stress response to the environment, that old school camera lens gets stuck like it's on manual focus, and then it's sluggish, and then you're relying on glasses or changing your body or changing the setup to just try and survive, much less thrive. I mean, with the right work, we can get to a place where we can reestablish smooth, fluid eye coordination, eye teaming, so that, that nausea and vertigo is no longer an option. And I would say the vast majority of nausea and vertigo is treatable and improvable. And, the kind that is maybe harder is if it's only with changes in body positioning. But even with that, like, there's a lot that we can do to support that.
Yeah.
And there's certain diagnoses, I'm sure you see this all the time, like vestibular migraines. Like, there's labels that are given to symptoms or behaviors when doctors or specialists don't really know what else to call it. But those really should be diagnoses of exclusion. We should be ruling out functional vision problems that are often hidden that cause the same symptoms and behaviors. And if the symptoms are gone, who cares what it was called, but you have the right solution in place. But the vestibular migraine and the PPPV, the different positional vertigos that are out there, there's always a visual component to those that is improvable at a minimum.
Well, I fully agree. And, when it comes to migraines, I find that a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a pattern where they've misdiagnosed themselves or been misdiagnosed by someone else. And most people consider a migraine a headache that's gotten so bad that this must be a migraine. This
Right.
is like most people's definition is it's a really bad headache.
Right.
So what happens is I see again a lot of the neck and jaw dysfunction, and I just made a video about this about 2 weeks ago about like let's see what you fall into. And when you start actually checking the boxes on the migraine, the head pain starts after movement versus the neck hurts after the head pain. Like when movement initiates it, that's one sign that it's actually coming from the neck. And then neck headaches can occur on one side or both sides of the head, just like migraines. Even though migraines are about 60% one side, they can occur on both sides. And I went through all these different stats. And what happens is, with migraines, if you feel you have a migraine, you feel a party feels like it's something out of your control, that it's something like that needs deep investigation. Whereas exactly what you just said, it comes down to the same process of like you do it, I do it. We start with a hypothesis, right? What's the biggest bang for your buck? What do we think is the highest likelihood of fixing you? We do that, and we see where you're at after. If that fixes you, great. If it didn't help at all, then we try something else. If it helped you 80%, well, what's going to get that extra 20%? And so, but sometimes with migraines, you feel like, it's like it leads to confusion. So I like to, because we had another question about constant dizziness that's debilitating as well. I like to, my program, I've always started with the mechanical portions and educating about the neuroscience piece, and then we shift into neuroplasticity. And then before I met you, I started doing, which now, like your program, I'm probably ashamed of what I was doing beforehand, but I would start saying people with dizziness, we go through the mechanical pieces, we go through as far as we can, and then we do vestibular desensitization. So we do like eye movements and sitting and changing and trying to desensitize, not taking vision into account. But the reason I bring it up is because I basically start with, let's do this and let's see what's left. And then if we need to refer to someone else, we'll do that. And I've been sending the people to your program now. And your approach is probably the opposite. Your approach is probably, let's do the vision stuff. And there's still something left. We'll send them over to him. But I just think that like where our two specialties intersect, it's like, if you do improve 90%, you have that 10% left over, or you only improve 50%, like explore the other side, because it's the truth is somewhere in the middle of the two of them.
Totally. And nothing against any vestibular PTs or anyone who does this, but what we see more often than not is like somebody who has dizziness, nausea, vertigo, migraines. The most common recommendation is to like look at something and just very quickly adjust your head and do like head, neck, eye stabilization type activities. I'm typically seeing people who've got very substantial, severe visual dysfunction, but that usually like awakens the sleeping bear, and symptoms just become worse because it's like what they were trying to suppress is now just on the front burner, and like, oh my God, now it's like the whole world is disorienting. Mm-hmm. And I think in most cases, it's, especially when we're working with somebody in a customized program, like let's find their threshold, let's stay below it, but like let's gently massage it. And we start with foundational vision work. A lot of times right eye work, left eye work, and two eye work, so that we can equalize skills at the same time. So then both are open, the brain's not having to pick an eye, but then also slowly incorporating movement and balance and cognition and vestibular input, because vision doesn't really operate in isolation of these other systems. The migraine, and I put this in air quotes, that happens when you're on screens or where too much reading or screen time causes a migraine, to me, that's not a migraine. That's a visual stress response. And that can be, I would say, in every case improved and in most cases eliminated. Migraines, though, that come on from other scenarios, that's a different story. But if vision is heavily involved in the triggering or exacerbation of symptoms, that's the answer to the test there, that vision is at least the first path to take to climb out of it.
Makes perfect sense.
Noel's putting in here about the Dr. Joe code. Thank you, Noel.
Yes, somewhere I'm totally scrolled past that, but the I'm looking for one more question, kind of that's going to tie easily between here. Let's see. And if you
work
go ahead.
with tinnitus?
So I do. So another, yeah, I just saw that question as well. So tinnitus and ear fullness, even ear ache. Sometimes the ENTs will, so they go to the ENT, and the ENT will tell them it's some type of TMJ problem. So usually when it comes to the ears, there's three main things that I'll see. It's tinnitus, ear fullness, and more of an ache. What you have to understand about the actual ear is that if you look right here, that's the ear canal. And if you look right here, that's the TMJ. And so
they're close together.
Yeah, they're neighbors. And so if you have any type of TMJ problem, inflammation, you're out of alignment, it can start by pure proximity creating compression on the ear, and it can produce the feeling of an earache. Then ear fullness, the eustachian tube goes inside, right? So the eustachian tube comes from the ear all the way deep in there, right where my finger is. And there's also the floor of the mouth and other muscles that butt up right against it. And some of those muscles are responsible for the eustachian tube opening. And then there's other muscles, like the medial pterygoid is one of them, that are right on that muscle that opens it. And if this muscle here is too tight, it doesn't let the opening muscle do its job, and you start having fullness. And so that's another thing that's a bigger one that I treat. And then tinnitus also can come from the TMJ or the jaw. Now, when I talk about the likelihood that we can improve each of these, the earache and the fullness are on the higher end. The tinnitus is more of a crapshoot because sometimes it improves, sometimes it doesn't. It's just so multifactorial when it comes to just general stress, the nervous system, something actually going on in the inner ear, or the jaw and the neck movement. And so I've definitely seen people improve. I just had someone in my group last week say they were working for about a week, and they were saying, like, I'm still working on the pain that I'm having, but so far the tinnitus went away. That was a great win that I just had the other day. But usually I tell people when they want to be treated for that, I don't know if this is going to help you because there's so many causes. The ear fullness, we can determine if it changes with different jaw movements. You can increase your prognosis. And then an earache, of course, people need to go to see the ENT first, but most people will come and say that there's nothing wrong with my ear. I had every single test. I went to the ENT. I did everything, and they're telling me nothing. And then we start looking for patterns.
So what I'm hearing is that for anybody here who has tinnitus and are told, like, you're just going to have to get used to it and your brain's going to just start to ignore it, you can be proactive, and there's a lot of work you can do with your guidance in terms of how to get there. I mean, that's huge. That's really similar to a specific condition called visual snow syndrome, which is
Yep. I saw a question in here about that as well.
It's gained so much traction in the last few years because now people are talking about it and there's actually research about it. So visual snow syndrome is a combination of symptoms, but it's almost like somebody is stuck in a snow globe where there's these floaters and these blobs that are either a bunch of them or literally like thousands of them. And oftentimes with that, they're also noticing light sensitivity, really difficult time seeing at night, after images with different lights and things. And what most doctors will say is like, yeah, it's on your awareness. You got to be less aware of it. You just got to like not let it annoy you as much. And I think that is one of the most dismissive ways that we can listen to people or even attempt to, kind of like tinnitus. And with visual snow syndrome, I mean, it is a brain hypersensitivity, and it's really neuroinflammation in the brain related to the visual system. And I've in over 100 patients with visual snow syndrome, I can think of one where we didn't drastically improve their symptoms. And in that one case, this individual refused to tackle this from more of a holistic systemic standpoint. They just wanted to specifically focus on the eyes. And he had a lot of toxicity in his environment and also had terrible nutrition, which was just making the problem worse.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's so easy to get dismissed, especially in the reactive medical world. But what I love so much about you and what I was so attracted to with your work and all that you put out there is you give people hope, but you also give people action in terms of do this work, become educated, and you'll actually see the proof in the pudding. You'll start to see things and symptoms improve because you're tackling the root cause, and then by tackling the root cause, the symptoms also then improve alongside. And that's the exact same approach we take with vision, where these are functional vision problems. What you're noticing is functional mechanical problems and how our body compensates in ways where they're not as efficient until they have the right instructions.
Yeah, it's, you can show for anyone suffering, you can go to someone who might be able to get you improvement or make you better, but if they haven't actually educated you on the process along the journey, you haven't been empowered at all. So like ultimately, and I'm sure most of the people that come to you are the same as me, I don't get the people who say like, oh, I tweaked my neck last week, I need some help. Usually people just wait for that to go away on its own, or they go try PT. And if it goes away, it goes away. I get the people where it's like, I tried, and it keeps getting worse. And usually those people are the ones who get to the point where they're like, because if it was the first time being injured, if it was the first week of pain, the first month of pain, and you convince someone you have to learn all this on your own, they're like, get out of here. This will just go on its own. But once someone's been suffering for 6 months, a year, they start saying, okay, you know what? Maybe I do need to take the accountability for my health. And those people are the ones that just do amazing. They hit their goals so quickly because they're processing it, they're learning, they're trying things, they're understanding the process that we need to use. And that's kind of where you have to get with your mindset first. Like whenever I look at someone to understand how well they're going to do, I'm always looking first at mindset, not the actual symptoms or injury.
And recognizing, like, coming in with the right mindset, but recognizing that you need to have hope in order to get to where you need to be. And of course, you can be guarded, but once you start to know, once trust is established, and once you start to see like the seas parting in terms of the unnecessary struggling that's in place, it's a lot easier to be really compliant. We're getting a lot of love in the chat here. I love that we're having this conversation here.
I know. This is great.
There was a comment about convergence insufficiency. That is really common, and it's related definitely to neck and posture. So that's fragile eye teaming, fragile eye coordination, where we can't converge our eyes to see a single clear image up close. There's an incredibly high correlation with convergence insufficiency and inattention or ADD or ADHD-like behaviors. And somebody who's been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD has 3 times the likelihood of having also convergence insufficiency, but we just often, doctors don't test for it or look for it. And it usually isn't the strength or the length of the eye muscles, it's coordination, but it's really poor coordination of the eyes with a near task, which is when we have to converge our eyes. And a lot of times we'll see people with convergence insufficiency. That is like the prime candidate for developing tech neck, where you're on the screen and all of a sudden you're leaning in because you're not able to pull the world in and keep it stable and easy to process with the eyes. You're allowing your body to take over what vision isn't able to do on its own. Do you want to quick test the screen for convergence insufficiency?
Yeah.
So put a target down midline. I'm going to use a pen here, and you want to have somebody look at that and try and keep it single and clear as you bring it down the nose. It should be all the way effortless to the nose, down midline, very easy. If it's not, if you're not able to converge all the way to your nose and really close, that is
I'm like here.
And then what happens? It goes double?
Yeah.
Joe, I know a guy who can teach you how to fix something in a couple days.
I got to come down there.
We can do this virtually. We'll talk after that. Screen fit actually would very likely drastically improve that. Probably eliminate that.
Amazing.
Do you read for pleasure?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like stamina or fatigue prevents how much you're reading?
I mean, so I can tell you this, but I've always been someone who falls asleep quickly. But if I get into bed and I read I'll read like 5 pages or sometimes 1 page and I'm out. So I don't know what that tells you.
That tells me that it is hard to use your eyes together. And that is like a joke in our clinic. If you use reading as a sleeping pill to help you fall asleep at night, you're gonna have to find a new way to fall asleep at night, because we can make that so you can read for as long as you like comfortably without it taxing the brain.
So it starts creating that essentially brain fog kind of taxation we were talking about.
100%. And I 1 out of 4 kids has convergence insufficiency, which the number is probably way higher, but it's underreported. And that's become such an issue now with this digital world that we're all in, where most of us don't have the visual skills to support screen time all day long.
Right.
I mean, the average American adult is 8 to 10 hours on a screen a day. The average 8 to 10-year-old is 6 hours on a screen a day. As humans, we're not meant to be staring at screens. We're meant to be scanning the horizon for dinner and danger and exploring through nature. And now we're making those same eye movements on these rectangle devices blasting light at us all day.
Yeah, and step into my world. That's the human body was meant for, all of the outdoors things and movement and physical activity. And now we're just kind of shutting it down.
But so do you feel like we're doomed as a species?
I mean, I feel like there's a wave happening right now, right? It's like I think we hit that low point, and it's going to be interesting because as the awareness and all this talking about movement is accelerating, so is the technology, right? So I don't know what that's going to look like. This AI wave that we've really been going through the past couple of years is scary. It's frightening. And once everyone starts getting those headsets and just, why go to the basketball game? I'll just sit here and watch it here. I'll turn to my right and my friend will be sitting next to me.
Why talk to a real person when I can just talk to my friend on AI here? That's telling me everything I want to hear.
I'll sit in my chair all day. I don't need to get out. I'll have every experience. I'll go running on the beach while I'm sitting. So it's like, I don't know. It's definitely, I have faith in humanity that we figure these things out, but if we don't fight it, it's bad. Problems are going to keep worsening.
Yeah. And from a vision perspective, we don't know what decades of screen time does to us long term yet.
Yeah.
But we're starting to learn clinically, and it's not good.
Well, when you look at the uptick in all of this during COVID, if you just look at that like a graph and you just look at that uptick, that's pretty clear evidence. Like the first time as the entire world, we've all had to be confined and sitting, and all of a sudden, all of this dysfunction raised. It's kind of like, what more evidence do you need?
100%. And even, the people who discount that, like even eye doctors who discount that, myopia, nearsightedness, is increasing at the most alarming rate. 30% of the world is nearsighted right now, and it's estimated by 2050 it's going to be 50% of the world. And just to give perspective, like from the past, when we landed on the moon in 1969, a fourth of America was nearsighted. Right now it's about 44%, meaning these numbers are skyrocketing because
we're not using our eyes.
We're not using our eyes, and the 3 biggest risk factors: not enough time outdoors. It's been proven that 90 minutes minimum a day is protective for the progression and development of nearsightedness. Too much near work in the dark, poor lighting definitely compromises the eye-brain connection and development of vision, and too much screen time. So simple things we can all start today, like getting outside more, moving more, going on walks, and taking a ton of breaks from screens. You do all that, you can start all that today, and at least you're taking a more proactive approach into the future, but having moderation and balance with all that it is that we do. I tell kids, like, as much time as you're on a screen, you're spending at least that much time outdoors, hopefully more, to really explore three-dimensional space, get natural light from the sun, and then also be able to navigate the world so vision can guide movement like it's intended to.
I love it. Let's see. So I was looking to see if I had any other questions in there. You spoke to PPPD before.
Yeah.
And we had someone ask a question a few times about it. And then you were saying that the misconception between PPPD and the vision work that you do. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I don't. Whoever's asking that, please message us on the side, and we'll go on a long rabbit hole together with this and give you a lot of information. PPPD is absolutely a real diagnosis. A lot of people have it, but I would say the visual component of that, if you're not analyzing how much vision is playing a role, and if you're not treating the visual piece, it is a massive missed opportunity, and it is often a misdiagnosis. We see patients every week with PPPD who go through the right type of vision performance training, and literally the diagnosis no longer applies. And so often that's this fight or flight response between the different sensory systems, and the brain really being stuck, almost like a seesaw, shifting between the visual system, the vestibular system, and other sensory processing systems, where it starts to use them independently rather than collectively as a whole. And then the feedback we get from all of this creates this imbalance and this disequilibrium, which then causes the world to spin and feel unsafe. And definitely that is not a death sentence. Definitely you can do a lot of work to help climb out of that state and get to a place where vision's guiding and leading rather than interfering.
And so, are you saying, so the way I understand it is an over reliance, but I guess maybe it's relying on vision in the wrong way.
So it's actually an adaptation in the brain in terms of how you're using vision. So PPPD, persistent postural perceptual dizziness, I believe that's what it stands for. It really has to do with the focal and the ambient visual processing pathways literally not being received and filtered at the same time. And so it leads to this ongoing sense of dizziness or spinning when you're static. And so it's conflicting signals on orientation in space. And then when you're changing positions, you're getting input from the vestibular system that's overriding everything else.
Yeah.
And so vision can't stabilize the body. And so many people will notice that their visual symptoms get so much better when they close their eyes. And people with PPPD, it's like, well, if I get up and have my eyes closed, I don't get nearly as dizzy as I would otherwise. Well, that's the answers to the test there. That's telling you that what your brain is filtering in terms of what's coming in through the eyes is disorganized, probably being received at different times, probably being received in different angles. And then also the brain is having a hard time superimposing them. I mean, we have two eyeballs, but the brain is wired so that it supplants that information to have it be received and acting as one system. But that's only if there's not a response to stress. When we go into a stress response, so much collapses and we start using our eyes independently of each other. And then that leads to even more instability, and it's this kind of downward spiral that happens.
And I think that's why you have to be so careful with labels and diagnoses, because, PPPD, you're going to put yourself in a box, where it's so much better just to assess. Like you said, if you close your eyes and it's better, you're showing that when that sense is turned on, things are worse, right? So there's something wrong with that sense.
Right.
Sometimes I'll put someone, if I just know that they feel disorientation and dizziness, and I tell them to stand on one leg or stand on, the grass outside, or if they have a pad to stand on, something that's a non-compliant surface, and they're just going over, I know that something with their proprioception is going on, because that little change, they're not able to adapt to it. But but if they're using their eyes on the horizon, and then all of a sudden they close their eyes and they fall over when they close their eyes, I know that that they utilize their eyes for vision as well.
Right. So I should stabilize the body.
I should stabilize the body. So you can start ruling things out. It's better with eyes closed, or it's worse with eyes closed. You're better on ground, or you're better with your feet on something. So it's instead of saying, I think I'm here, it's just about testing, and you test and you see what works and what doesn't. And I always say, check the box. What do we have here? You did that. Okay. Check it. Go to the next one. If you're willing to hang in there and just work through everything, eventually you get to it.
And if your balance seems off with anything that you're doing, the first place that we should be exploring is vision. I mean, so often people talk about I have a dominant eye. Well, everybody has a dominant eye, but that doesn't mean you're using that eye more than others. It just means your body is centering around that eye because they're in slightly different places. And so from a balance perspective, as we age, falls happen more often, and cognitive decline happens and visual decline happens. Well, first of all, cognitive and visual decline don't have to happen. That's just common. That's not normal. But when that does happen, that throws off your balance. And so falls are more likely because, as silly and simple as this sounds, we're not trusting what we're seeing. So it's often like that change in elevation going down a curb, or like a root that's going over the sidewalk. You don't see it. You snag it by mistake, you fall, and then game over. There's all these new problems because we have, muscle density. We have bone density that has decreased. We have muscle density that's decreased, even though it doesn't have to. But unless we're actively doing the work to keep us where we need to be as those things drop, falls are likely until we have the right type of performance training, so that performance is life and longevity, and being able to have our eyes, brain, and body working fluidly together through all aspects of life.
Perfectly put. I'm going to have to hop off soon. I don't know if we have any last question that we should answer. Is there anything else that you didn't get to touch on that you wanted to talk about? I mean,
there's a lot in here about, can this be fixed and can this be helped? And I think oftentimes we try and explain like the what and the why, but yes, pretty much everything we're talking about can be fixed and can be improved. And we probably should be leading with that, because if this was standard of care, if this was the type of stuff that everybody knew and everybody knew what to do, it wouldn't be so top of mind and that urgency that we have to be able to get our minds together, have a conversation that people can listen to know, to empower and educate, so that we can know better and really do better. But this is not commonplace in the medical system yet.
No, it's not. It's kind of, it's all of this is coming through. It's kind of like the wave of looking at the body more functionally from a medicine perspective. And it's the same thing, kind of the same exact path that we're on. I think that for what we do, like if we do, we've talked about it before, but do a webinar where we can actually do more demonstration, where some of these concepts can hit home, where you go through a couple slides and I go through a couple, and we show how these systems work together. I think that there will be so much more clarity for people watching as well. So we should definitely do something like that.
And anybody who has time, scroll through Dr. Joe's Instagram and go through mine. I mean, we put out exercises and simple things that we can all do, and certain tips and habits that we can start today. Obviously, a really thorough treatment plan is more involved than that. But I mean, there's certain eye exercises you can start today that will make it so you don't need stronger reading glasses every year if you're in the 40s and above. In many cases, you're less dependent on the ones you have. And in some cases, you don't even need them. I mean, that's what's so crazy is symptom improvement is important. But again, if you're figuring out what's causing the symptom changes, then the symptoms are going to improve, directly and indirectly from the right type of work.
It's true. It's just a matter of kind of you can test on your own. You can start trying things, and I think that's the point of my content. It's like I know these things will help everybody. It's just which one's for you, and that's kind of what we have to get to.
I have a really important question. You do so many amazing demonstrations, and a lot with this.
This guy?
This guy behind you, does he have a name? Does he or she have a name?
It's funny.
If not, we got to give him one.
He does not have a name, and I've had a handful of people ask me. I'm like, I think I'm trigger shy with it. Like I don't want to pull the trigger on it because I'm like, I don't know why I'm hesitating to give him a name. I got 3 of them here. Well, one of them is snapped in half now, so I'm actually chopping them up. I'm going to use individual body parts for demos. But no, there's still no name for these guys. They just kind of hang with me in silence.
Well, maybe in meditation, see what comes to you. See if the name comes out. Because
maybe 2026 I need to finally name them. Give them some dignity.
Absolutely, I can throw some options out there if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, throw some out.
What is it? Do you have an alter ego?
No, I don't. What's actually funny? I had an imaginary friend as a child, and my
Who was
mom.
that?
His name was Marby, Marby.
So I have no
idea where I got that from.
One of these 3 has to be Marby.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that
I mean,
I think I'm 100% down with that.
think about how much time you spend with the skeleton.
Oh, they're just
Probably
over my shoulder at all times.
more time you spend with your million kids. So I mean,
Yeah.
let's formally call one Marby today. We'll remember this day for the rest of your life.
I never thought of it that way, naming one after my imaginary friend, but I kind of love the idea, Marby.
Done.
That's it, and that's how we wrap it up by
I love
naming
it.
my skeleton my imaginary friend's name.
Love it.
Uh,
Dude, so appreciate your time and love
appreciate
how
your
we're putting
time.
this out there. Let's keep these conversations rolling and help educate and empower people as best as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. And if you guys have any questions after, just DM either of us, and we'll get back to you.
100%.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too, man. Have a great day. Talk
All right.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.